What do you have there?
Evangelion.
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
And we're back once a motherfucking again. The Anime Fried Chicken Podcast, episode 4. What's the situation here? Because I understand, Hassan, you've got a weird relationship with this anime. Obviously, you're a huge, you have an encyclopedic knowledge and history of anime. And this is a classic, but there's something about it that's never clicked with you. What's the deal?
Well, I tried to watch it obviously a few times back in the day. So I tried to probably had about 4 attempts of watching it over the last 15 years, and then there's just something about it every time. Just couldn't engage with it, and I always switched it off. So 10, 11, 12. That's probably about as far as I ever got. And then they were discussing it last week with Jack and Healy, and then they just suggested watching the recap films, and then so it's the Death and Rebirth, and then End of Evangelion, as they thought I might be missing a trick and classic and all the rest of it. So I went and did that this week.
Fantastic.
And kind of feel vindicated in my decision not to have watched it over all these years. So it's not like, so I only watched the Godfather maybe when I was like 21. And then after I went and watched it, I was like, I can't believe all this time I hadn't watched this film. You know, when everyone says something is sick, it's usually because it's sick. I didn't feel that way here. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't pure trash or anything, but it was a bit mixed up, bit muddled, and I mean the word overrated comes to mind.
Okay, amazing. So here's the deal. You've wandered into the church. You just don't really buy into this, religion stuff, this God stuff. The two priests, Jack and Healy, are sitting there at the pew, and they turn around and they see you, Hassan, walking in, a non-believer. And you ask them, why do you believe in this crap? What is so beautiful about God?
It's interesting you've chosen the church as the analogy here, even since you haven't watched it, because this show is rife with images of the cross. Like,
we don't do coincidence of this show. That metaphor was on point for a reason. There's a lot of God references on the show. And so I'm going to bring the two zealots in, Jack and Healy, Evangelion. Why don't we start with, what it is? Jack, what is Evangelion? Why is there a film about it? I've never heard of it. What is this?
Big anime series initially before the films that we watched. Created by Hideaki Anno, produced by Gainax in the 90s, I believe. Sort of a science fiction anime, a mecha anime about a reluctant teenage boy who is forced to fight aliens called angels with weird powers that come down from space in the shadow of a sort of cataclysmic event that's happened years before. Healy, you want to jump in?
So we watched Kill la Kill a couple of weeks back, and even though right now Studio Trigger they've cut their teeth, they're big boys on the scene, but back then in the 90s, Gainax were killing it on the scene. We're talking Neon Genesis Evangelion was the Star Wars of the East. It was a household, a recognizable name. Its significance was being the first anime to be taken seriously by academics and like Joe average public alike for being intellectually challenging in theming, character story, philosophies. It was hype shit.
Love that. Okay, so we've heard it described as Star Wars of the East, but Hassan, it feels to me this is more Jar Jar Binks than Obi-Wan, right? Am I getting that right?
I mean, I'm not sure if you watched the film draft. The recap film, the first one, it's about 60 minutes long, and it's basically like a mishmash of scenes from the TV show. I was actually very surprised to read afterwards that they'd gone and actually edited it and added more scenes, because honestly, I've never seen something paced like that. I don't think the film's actually meant for people who haven't watched the series. I think it's like a longish recap for people who have watched the series, because honestly the way they'd cut that was first like 10 minutes there's about 6 scenes interspersed with just like a black screen taking you like 10 years later, 18 years later, 6 months earlier. I was like,
okay. So we've got some unique circumstances right here, because to set the scene, Hassan, you've dropped this series like 2 or 3 times, right? This is Evangelion's last hope getting on your watch list. And the recap movie may not be the prettiest way to do it, but it will funnel in all of the key moments from the series in very quick successions and as succinctly as possible. It's kind of like like getting ass blasted with all of the mishmash of weird shit that happens. Like even in 25 episodes, whatever it is, it's abstract as fuck. So to condense that into like 60 minutes, yeah, it's a challenge. But yeah, so that's kind of like the premise here. Like this was the last go at it, really.
Healy, what I get from you is that obviously you set up, you painted the picture, you really contextualize Evangelion really well. It was a big cultural phenomenon in Japan. But what I understand you're a bit of a mega fan. Like what is this anime as a whole? I'm not talking about the films, but the series, everything. What's the top line for you? Like what does it mean for you?
I would say that Evangelion, at least the end of Evangelion film, the remade finale is my favorite piece of anime media ever made.
Wow.
I'd even go as far as to say it could be my favorite piece of media ever amongst like games, film, TV. Yeah,
Wow.
I know, outrageous.
Hang on, timestamp this one.
Wow.
Stop a second.
I can watch.
No, I mean, don't carry on. I just can't believe it.
I can watch that final film and enjoy every scene. Not even every scene, every cut. There's not a dull moment in the first 60 minutes, and then after that, as a package, it's still a 10 out of 10.
Your favorite anime film ever?
Ever.
Even
Not
after
even
watching
close.
Redline?
It's not even close.
Madness.
Jack, how about you? I'm guessing Healy's an 11 out of 10. Where do you kind of sit on this one?
I get where he's coming from, but I don't think I'm quite at an 11 out of 10. Like, I love the series. I think the series is an important watch. Like watching the recap episode again over the weekend, or not episode, sorry, the recap film. I just thought I'd be so lost if I hadn't watched the series before. So confused what was going on. I don't think it does that well. But for me, who hadn't watched the series in a little while, it was the perfect sort of refresher. And then going into end of Evangelion, which I had seen before many years ago, but I think I got more out of it this time. And it is a brilliant film, but I wouldn't put it up sort of 11 out of 10. I do think sometimes it's a bit too, I don't know, obtuse, a bit too clever for its own good, or tries to be. And I think it gets a bit heavy-handed with some of the issues that it runs with. But it's thoroughly entertaining. It's got some brilliant action scenes in it, and it ties the series up much better, I think, than the original ending, which is the last 2 episodes of the series, which did not go down well with the community.
I think, yes, on that line, I think that depth and that density of thought-provoking material, and how mismanaged expectations of fans and what they thought of the final episode that led to the outrage and endless death threats that Hideaki Anno got to remake the ending and release the final film. It's exactly that what prompted Evangelion to be the most analyzed, discussed anime of all time. And to create that kind of meta cult community around it is unparalleled. Yeah, you don't get this for, I don't know, any other bargain basement HMV VHS cassette tape anime. You just don't see it.
I'm allowing soft spoilers here, but like, what's the beef with the final 2 episodes? I heard that there's a lot of controversy around that.
Time constraints and budget issues. That literally that was it. And because of mismanaged studio time and poor production, the fans were just calling for blood. Absolutely calling for blood.
We're talking about stickmen characters and flipbooks. Is that what we're talking about?
I mean,
If only.
Oh my god!
It changes from the end of episode 24 from what you wouldn't expect what was coming next, and then all of a sudden you are lost as to what was going on. The animated scenes massively dipped in quality and quantity. There's just stills and drawings, and they're just flashing up cue cards with information. It's so confusing to work out what's going on that I had to immediately Google it to think, what the fuck did I just watch, and why did that happen? And now I've watched it multiple times, and probably because I've read into it, it makes more sense to me as a finale, but it's not the ending that the film End of Evangelion is, which I think is a much more satisfying conclusion to the series.
Wicked. All right, let's get into breaking it down a little bit. There's a ton of characters in this anime who have very kind of different arcs. There's very different archetypes, I understand, in this anime. There's, the beta male protagonist, which is not a common one. I believe so, yeah. Which is not necessarily a common kind of like archetype used as a protagonist, but like I understand that is like a theme within like certain genres of anime. So like, why don't we talk about, let's start with the main character and kind of talk about his arc. Like, who is he? How does he end up in this situation? Why is this compelling to watch?
Did you guys like Shinji on first watching? How did he grade against you guys?
He's annoying. He's still annoying. He's a crier. Cries weeping so much. I think he's like presents as being quite a deep character, but is actually like quite like a one note. Actually, I think it's not actually as deep as you're led to believe, and is depth, or if he is deep, it's like a shallow type of depth.
I think he is deep. I think I'd give him credit for that, and I think he is an interesting main character. But he is a very frustrating main character to watch. You almost don't want to root for him at some points, particularly in this film. There's a lot of the time when he was just getting on my nerves in End of Evangelion.
Well, yeah, 'cause he's just on the floor crying.
Yeah.
On the floor crying, but all of
over half the film,
he doesn't do anything else. Tell me what he does in the film. He goes right, and he's just crying on the floor until the lady dies upstairs in the elevator, puts him downstairs, and then he just carries on crying on the floor. Then the machine picks him up and puts him inside, and then he still carries on crying. He doesn't. I swear to God, he doesn't fucking do anything.
You guys are not getting the most out of Shinji. The way to look at it is to enjoy his suffering, to find catharsis in him being just downtrodden and beaten as a person. He is to Hideaki Anno, not the self-insert, but like the community insert. He's what he sees Otaku Japan as. Shinji is the hikikomori nation, but he despises his own consumers of his own product.
That came through strongly at the end of the film when it showed literally a theatre, like a cinema crowd. One of them had a Ayanami Ray doll that they were holding and essentially just said like, people getting lost in fantasy worlds have problems.
Hang on, this can't be real.
This 100% happened at the end of the film.
Nice bit of contempt. Very good.
I quite like that, it's quite, holds the mirror up and be like, fuck you, bunch of weebs.
It's endless. It's every time you get those guttural screams from Shinji as like you witness him like almost kill his best friend or pop someone's head off or just completely lose his mind. And he's just subject to all this torment. And if you can find enjoyment in that, then you're going to have time of your life.
No, I don't. I'm just going to go out there and say I didn't find enjoyment in Shinji's suffering. That is not the direction I was coming at this film from, or this series. But I do think he's an interesting character, particularly because Hideaki had serious depression throughout making this film, this series, and before. Like crippling depression. And I think he wrote a lot of that into Shinji. And also, I think it was supposed to be a bit of a subversion of mech animes previously, where you had these kids who had greatness thrust upon them. You're the only person who can save XYZ, whatever it is. And then they sort of rise up, get through the challenges and do what they need to do. Shinji tries to do that, but essentially does what any weak 14-year-old who has been abandoned by his parents and lived a traumatic life, he just can't handle it, and he breaks constantly. And it's difficult for him to find any sort of support or any kind of person to reach out to. And I think it's a really interesting idea of thinking, what would an actual 14-year-old who's had some severe psychological trauma do when you put this kind of pressure on him? Be like, you're the only person who can save the whole world. Off you go.
It's, and Hideaki Anno definitely had that envisaged as well as young childhood trauma as a theme, because they flashed images through the abstract portion of the film towards the end of crayon-drawn stickmen in pretty graphic situations, and those were actually taken from real life of abused children. And that had submitted pictures to police and officials. Yeah, it's pretty real shit.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Can you just repeat that? I was very zoned out.
I'm not sure I want him to.
I zoned out for just 1 second there, and then I just heard something about what was that?
I'll repeat it. So there's flashes towards the end when it gets super abstract of like crayon drawn people with like heads chopped off or being injured. Do you remember that? So those were taken from real life, and those were drawings from abused children, like during the policing process of like rehoming them. Images of their psychological distress illustrated, pretty much mental.
Quite deep. How does one get a hold of images like that? Sounds like a GDPR nightmare.
Oh my god, it's the 90s, man. All right. Okay, we all know the greatest perpetrators of trauma are the parents. I hear there's a really interesting dad character in this film, which some people love, obviously, some people hate. Who is this guy? What's the deal here?
Raf, I think you said it best a while back. Gendo Akari is just a guy trying to do his job, and Shinji's just fucking around all over the place, messing it up.
He's just trying to do his job.
No one can see any problems with his parenting style? None?
Excellent parent.
Abandoning his child at a very young age, making it clear he wants nothing to do with him, and then bringing him back to be like, fight for me, or the world dies. And then telling him immediately afterwards, I want nothing to do with you anyway, but you will essentially come when called and do what I tell you.
Sounds
there's big things going on, man. There's big events going on. You can't sometimes certain things have to be done. It's wartime, man. You know.
So what's the dad's role? Like he works for like this kind of is it a private military tech? Like he's the head of some sort of like defense team. Like what's the dad's actual role in this? Like why is he calling his son to get into a robot to get blasted by angels? Like what's the deal here?
Yeah, dad of the year, helpless romantic, just doing his job. He works for Nerve, private Japanese institution, contracted to build Evangelions to fight the angels for the Japan and the Earth's defense. He's a class act. He's a cool guy. He's a man in love. He makes questionable decisions. But yeah, a hapless romantic. What can he do?
I thought it was interesting his role in the films that we watched, the end of Evangelion. I think it revealed a little bit more about why he was doing what he was doing, which I don't think I was ever really clear on in the series. I think for a long time, for the whole series, he's so mysterious. You think, is there something more to his character, something more that he's planning? But I got the feeling from the end of his sort of time in End of Evangelion, where that he was fairly single-minded in his goal to see his ex-wife again, and knew he would be a shit dad. So it was like, it's just for the best I stay away from him as much as possible, which I think was actually more interesting than evil for the sake of evil.
I don't really have any strong opinions about him. He's like a bit of a departure from your usual anime type dad. He's got a bit more angles to him in that sense. It's like they kind of cast him well as like a counterpoint and like a reason for why Shinji's such a bitch. So they do a good job there. His character arc personally is a bit they like explain, they show his intentions. I know it's kind of like how I feel about the whole rest of it, which is kind of like it's like threatening to have like some deeper meaning, and it's looking like it's going to, but it doesn't really. Or if it does, I don't get it, and that to me means it just hasn't been delivered well. But that's a conversation more for later, maybe. In terms of the character, I don't really have any strong opinions. I can't lie. But it's underwhelming.
Well, what are the other pilots like? Is there, do we have the infamous plush toy plug in this anime as well? Is that something that's also going to come up? Like what? Who else? Like who else is good? Who else pops off?
I think the best character in it is probably Misato. I'm not sure what you guys think, but I think she has like the best arc, and I think she's probably she has the most dimensions to her of all the other characters. The rest of them, they're not, honestly, it's not like I can't sit here and say that they're all like not fleshed out completely, but they're just a bit, I think, one note for the most part, most of them. But Misato definitely a better character.
Yeah, I agree. I think Misato is a good character, and she has a lot to do in the End of Evangelion as well. I didn't like the weird kiss with Shinji.
What was that? It's just it's stupid. I'm telling you.
I didn't get
Well, no,
that.
it's because, do you know why? It's because this is there's a lot of stuff in this which is like all a bit Freudian. There's all it's all a bit Oedipal. That that character's actually his mom, and his dad is like the fucking guy he has to get pat. And so, but you know what? Like, if I shouldn't need to go and know that for you to impart a point on me. Like, if you're gonna give me a point and it's gonna be cleverly packaged, I should be able to understand it without having some outside knowledge of like. It's actually basic psychology, right? But I think if you view it under that, then it like explains a lot more of the stuff. But I don't think it's been like deeply woven in. I think it's a bit ham-handed and a bit thrown on, like all the crucifix references. Like, and you need like a theologian to tell me what's the relevance of them and why there's so many. I don't really even care to know.
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount that went straight over my head in the series and in the film. And then if you go and look at like themes of Evangelion on, say, like Wikipedia, it's pages long of shit that I just completely failed to pick up on.
And you studied psychology as well. So right, you got a university degree in that, and you're good at it. And it's still, they didn't. I don't know, man. It's just that's what I mean. I feel like it's supposed to be deep, and it's trying to be. And like, just because these guys maybe in 1995 they've just been getting spammed with like animal animes and like things just for kids, so they got a bit gassed with this, but. I don't think it's that deep, man. I really don't. I think it's nearly is. I think it's got some good ideas. I'm not saying it's shit, but it's not like, oh yeah, go and watch that. That's some seminal, life-changing shit. Like, and maybe if they put the first mecha in an anime, then I don't know, man. It's not for me, Clive. Not for me.
I think we should mention the other pilots, just at least the other pilots.
All right, so Evangelion kind of pioneered the waifu wars. Okay, so we've got Rei Ayanami and we've got Asuka Shoryu Langley. The two femme fatales of Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's highly contested. There's a conversation that's been gone through the ages now. The yandere versus the tsundere. The gentle, hey, how's it going, versus the you idiot Shinji, go die, get in the robot and just die. So you've got a nice girl and you've got a bad girl. It's all whatever your kink is. But it had the population of Japan divided, hugely contentious. Which was the right waifu, and waifu serious business. Maybe it's your waifu, but it's not my waifu. These were massive contracts. Oh, I'm massively into Asuka, and by into I mean I respect Asuka. She's a pretty good character. She has great character growth and a good story arc.
I agree with that. I think she's one of the better one for sure.
We're a pro Asuka podcast here.
Definitely, man. And we love strong female characters as well.
Shinji just let her get murked as well. He's such a melt, man. What a melt.
I like Rei until I found out that she was kind of part of Shinji's mum's soul, and it was kind of weird when they were like having chance sexual encounters. And
that was super weird, man. I'm telling you, there's some. It's like. It's part. I think those are like the better parts of the story, man. I don't mind a bit of like anime incest, man. About that.
Definitely, man. We're a very open-minded podcast.
Yeah, man.
I like there's a recurring theme week to week. I think we should keep that as a segment.
Yeah, it's true, man. Always up hearing about Healy's take on the female characters.
And then we've got two more pilots as well. We've got the fourth child, which is Toji, Shinji's classmate. Didn't see that coming at all. They just brought on another pilot halfway through the anime series, but in the films, all you really see is him kind of say, "Hey, I'm a pilot now." He gets into his mech, it goes fucking rampage. Shinji refuses to take down what was an Ava, but now is an evil angel. But his decision is overridden by his overbearing parent, Gendo Ikari.
That's just on job, man. That's on job.
Yeah, his job is making Shinji grip the mech, like rip out the entry plug where Toji's sitting in his little capsule and crush the shit out of it. Shinji's in his chair just screaming for I don't know, man.
Honestly,
in a bad way.
Is the anime like the film? Is it just him screaming a lot, crying?
He screams a lot,
sitting on the floor.
He's only screaming when he's like ripping people's heads off and pulling them apart and breaking their spines. So it's kind of a given. But
kind of
yeah.
realistic, I suppose. I can't like complain too much about that. It is like, at least it's more a realistic telling of actually what would happen if anyone got like a 14-year-old got forced to do that. But
there's definitely a question over whether it's entertaining though as a main character, and I think it is just about.
We've got the fifth child, which is Kaoru, who's introduced like 2/3 of the way through the series, and I didn't see that coming either. And I did not like Kaoru as a character. I thought it was just a way to give Shinji's character himself like some extra dimensionality, making him a bit camp and having these weird like homoerotic interactions with a new guy that's just arrived on the scene.
Oh, is that the guy he takes a bath with?
Is that a guy he takes a bath with? I think it might be. He goes further than that. He goes with Kaoru down to Central Dogma, and they fight it out, and he pops his dear little head off, and it's a good scene. It's some great stuff.
Great pause for effect there. One of my favourite pauses in anime. Like seconds go by, nothing happens, just on a still of him holding Kaoru in his Evangelion, deciding whether to kill him or not. And it goes on for at least 10 times as long as you think possible.
Why does he have to kill him? Like, because I like that. Like, I only watched the film, so actually
it turned out he was a baddie all along. He was an angel, and he was one of the final angels to test Shinji. I mean, a lot of that went over my head.
Honestly, please explain me like the base. Like, I didn't follow all of those things that happened with like the side character, with like especially with that character. I didn't really follow his arc.
Come on, dude.
I think like all angels,
it's pretty simple stuff.
Yeah, he's trying to break in, find the body of Adam, so that he can, emerge as a dominant life form instead of humans and evolve to the next level of godhood. But instead, Lilith's down there, so he's like, shit, it's Lilith, it's not Adam. You might as well kill me now, Shinji. I think that's how it went down.
They kind of beat it over the head, and it was all pretty self-explanatory. But in case you missed it, Adam's the first angel, Lilith's the second angel. Every other angel that you've seen through the recap films, all the big scary monsters, those were angels 3 to 16. Kaoru is angel number 17. Humanity itself is angel number 18, derived from Lilith, whereas every other angel was derived from Adam. They were intergalactic beings or celestial bodies that crashed, Adam and Eve, that crashed into Earth, the black egg and the white egg. Each had their own sphere of Longinus. The Lilith sphere of Longinus was destroyed. So Adam was in suspended animation. Lilith then populated the Earth with her offspring, which was the Lilin, which was humanity. Then the sphere of Longinus from Adam was like somehow wound over to Lilith, and we saw her pinned up. And then Adam started making angels. And then you had and that was the first impact. Then you went on to have the second impact at the Geo front, where the Kataragi guy and Misato's dad fucked the world up, like killed half the population and almost destroyed the planet. And then Kaoru was born and had a super hot, steamy homoerotic scene with Shinji down in Central Dogma. And that's pretty much where we're at.
Very good description.
Surely you picked up on that from the film, Hassan. I mean, this is all very clear.
Oh yeah. I want you to tell me. Go on. What's the point of this film? What's the point this guy's trying to get across? And what's his point about the human condition? Because I think it's actually, this is like a drama masquerading as a sci-fi film.
I think bang on. It is a character study and a drama, like masquerading as a mech anime. I think it starts, and you could watch half of it and think this is, every week there's a different monster to fight, a different angel. There's a cool sci-fi post-apocalyptic world that they live in. The actual mechs are really cool, but as it goes on, that's less relevant, and it's more about how the characters are so broken in different ways, and the fact that they can't interact with each other on any level because they just don't have either the social skills, or they've got something like severe mental health issues or trauma that's holding them back, each in different ways. And I think the point of it comes down to that, the connection between other people and how difficult that is for some humans. And I think when at the end of Evangelion, it comes down to essentially Shinji's choice of what happens to humanity then. And for a while, he just breaks down the barriers, breaks down the ego between all people. They all dissolve into some weird soup, primordial soup. And that's when the more psychological explorations of what that then means to him, like it goes into. But I think that from what I understood, it's about connection and the themes of failing to connect with other people, but struggling to get better at that.
That's actually, do you know what? I think that's a really good segue into our next section. When we talk about some of the themes you just mentioned there, Jack, and let's expand upon them a bit, because it feels to me, my read on what everyone's saying is that this is a very kind of discourse-rich film or series, or how we want to analyze it. And what are some of those themes? Like you've touched upon this kind of idea of like connection, and like I understand there's something to do with the dangers of getting too close to people. Was it like the cactus? Was it called the cactus theory or something? I can't remember what it's called.
The Hedgehog Dilemma.
The Hedgehog Dilemma. Let's start there. What does that mean?
It's the idea of getting close to someone else and opening yourself up exposes you, and it's that kind of sense of self and humility that is overbearing. And Shinji being the straw man, the personified attackerism and hikikomori-ness that Anno himself despises. They show it in the show as like AT fields, as like they manifest what the barriers you'd put up, like social day-to-day life between other people, if perhaps you're more introverted. But they show this in mecha anime as like a force field to deflect attacks and such. And as Jack said, by the end of the film, it's all kind of melted away, and they become one. But Shinji decides that this is not the optimal path, and that perhaps interacting with other people and living a meaningful life is worth pursuing, and what makes humanity great. There's also the massive theme of decision making and owning your decisions and not going along with what other people tell you to do. Masato like drills it into Shinji's head, like you need to make your own decision and do whatever the fuck you want to do, and stick with it. Whereas Shinji's like, I'll do whatever, I'll get in the robot if it makes my dad happy, I'll be that bitch boy. But that's kind of like the theme that Hideaki Anno is drilling into the series, is make your decision, stick with it, and be your own man.
I think that resonates with me, the whole aim for Shinji to become more independent and more confident in his own abilities. And it can be frustrating that he fails quite a lot, and he keeps falling back on this self-hatred, I guess, and he really struggles with his sense of self. Like Healy said, he's doing it for other people. He's doing it to sort of please his dad. He's doing it because he thinks he has to. He's not really doing anything for himself for quite some time. And I think that's a continued theme in the final film as well, in the end of Evangelion, where he is broken for like 60% of that film, and it's frustrating to watch. And Hassan, I can imagine if you've not watched the series, everything leading up to why he's broken, you would be very frustrated that he's not doing anything. He's literally being dragged around by another character for over half of this film. And I think the ending's interesting because, yeah, he makes the decision, like Healy said, that this isn't the way to evolve humanity. And even though interacting with other people is painful, like the Hedgehog Dilemma, and is dangerous, and time again he's got hurt because of that, he realizes that still is worth it and better than everyone dissolving their AT fields or inner walls and just getting on with everybody forever. But then the very last scene, which I don't know, maybe we can come back to later, but confuses me because I struggle to understand what's going through Shinji's head in the very last scene when him and Asuka wash up on a beach.
In retrospect, like it's easy to say, oh, actually, at the very last moment, he says, nah, actually, fuck it, I don't want to do this, and like just completely does a 180 on everything that the movie's built up to be at that point. But maybe it's just character growth.Maybe this is what we needed.
Why is he the guy? Why is he the guy who's going to make this decision?
I think it's something to do with the Eva he pilots. I think it's a special Eva because, I know I'm probably going to get this very wrong, but it's the only Eva that was born from Lilith and not Adam,
correct.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Okay.
And he can sort of bond with this Eva better than anyone else. And he's basically been bred to do this and is brought up to do this. And
Is it the same Eva, his mum pilot? Or?
No. So what it is that if on a single planet no two seeds of life can exist at the same time, only one seed of life is supposed to hit a planet. So when Adam and Eve both hit when Adam and Lilith both hit Earth at the same time, that was a colossal fuck up. So if these two come into contact with each other, it goes nuclear and explodes, and that's the end of the planet pretty much. As Jack said, all the other Avas were from Adam, and Shinji's purple-green one is different and was born from Lilith. What happened in the lead up to the end of the film was that Kaji, Misato's lover, has like a new embryo of Adam, and he smuggled that back to Gendo Ikari. Ikari had that in his hand, and they did that weird scene where he put his hand into Ray's chest. He was implanting a part of Adam, and then Adam wanted to merge Ray and Lilith to bring back Yui, but then Ray said, no, fuck you, Gendo, and she went off and said, I'm going to do it with Shinji, he's the guy. She goes off to Shinji. Shinji in his Ava is a conduit because it was it's made from Lilith, but it's each Ava has a soul as well. So Shinji's Ava 01, has the soul of his mother in it. Asuka's Ava has the soul, part of the soul of her crazy abusive mum in it. And Ray's 00 Ava has part of her first clone soul in it. And that's why it goes fucking nuts, because it's like barely a formed soul and it's a clone of an original human. So it's like got so many screws loose. That's why it keeps rampaging, and she's constantly bleeding out of her ass, and he's got bandages everywhere, and she's always half dead. So at the end, essentially all it is that a part of Adam and a part of Lilith are going to merge and do another nuke and do third impact. And it's right up until the last moment, until Shinji says, nah, fuck it, and calls it off. And then it doesn't happen. And then they wind up on the beach, and he's strangling a bitch. Why has he got his hands around Asuka's neck? I never understood that part.
Nah, that part lost me entirely. Like, completely.
It's like a flash. It's a throwback to there's another scene earlier where they're arguing about something, and then he tries to choke her up then. But I don't know. I can't remember. I only saw that in a flashback.
So that scene makes sense to me. I don't think it's a flashback. I think it's just like in his internal psychological world, he's basically arguing with Asuka, basically blaming each other for their lack of connection and their failure to, become something more with their relationship. And essentially both of them are to blame in different ways. Asuka because she's quite rude and prickly and argumentative, and Shinji because he just has a tendency to withdraw and ball himself up and not talk about his feelings. So they fail to connect on a massive level, which causes all sorts of issues. And they're hashing this out, and then Shinji just loses it and starts to strangle her. I didn't really understand the very end bit when it seemed like it wasn't psychological, he was back as a person, somehow washes up on the shore with Asuka, who I thought had died halfway through this film.
Should be.
I thought it was, 100% that she was dead. They both wash up. He chokes her. She strokes his face. He starts to cry. She calls him disgusting, and the film ends. It is so strange. Whoa. Such a strange ending that is way beyond my, interpretation.
Do you think it would have been a better ending if they just let it finish with like this singularity having happened?
Well, that's essentially the ending of the show. Like, there is no grand reunification of everybody in that they're not like, oh, and we're back to being human again. In the show, it's all very abstract for the last 2 episodes. It's entirely within people's sort of internal worlds. And it ends more with Shinji gaining some measure of internal peace and acceptance with what's happened. And I quite like that element of the ending, even if it is a bit too abstract for me. It's quite a nice, happier ending.
So what you're telling me is that the ending, which is grossly underfunded, which involves stills and cue cards, actually was better than the movie ending?
I don't know about better, but it's more pleasing to me in terms of my need for a happier ending. So, which doesn't necessarily make a better story, but I still like a happy ending. Whereas at the end of Evangelion, I was just confused.
I know. I was probably the last one to watch it out of you guys, other than Hassan. I was the last one to watch it, and I was kind of typing my reaction to you guys as I was watching it, and I was outraged when I watched the end of the series. I was one of those neckbeards that would have been flaming Hideaki. I would have been sending death. Now, maybe not death threats, but I would have been so vehemently angry if I knew that I didn't have, or if I didn't have End of Evangelion to kind of give me that closure for the series. It's abstract is an understatement. It's like just half of it was just flashing words and questions towards the audience. It was like asking the viewers to kind of provide their own ending as opposed to giving something concrete to close out on, which is absolute bullshit. I think that was just an escape plan, and that was a bitch way out for Anno in the first series.
Okay,
I don't think the second finish is much better. Like, what is it? Yeah, everything's all right, and then show me pictures of just like Tokyo from now with actual real humans in it at the end of it. Anime. Like, I don't know, man. That thing's a bit that whole operation's a bit hoity-toity for me, a bit highfalutin. And I just don't think it's as deep as it presents. I think it's a bit too confusing. I think it's too muddled, and like I think if you want to deliver, if the things that are really clever in delivering me a point, I don't have to go and think and like ask myself afterwards, what have I just watched, and try and unpick it.
Yeah,
I think it's like quite heavy-handed. Like the imagery they use throughout it is like it doesn't really have any bearing on the overall point. Like, I don't know why there's so much religious imagery and so much religious lore like threaded into everything, when it's like essentially like a story about how a bunch of kids getting abandoned by their parents or something like that. So I don't really know why it's all in there, other than like some kind of reverse Orientalism where it's just like, oh yeah, this shit looks cool, right? Get those crosses in there. I don't know.
Well, why don't we close out this discussion? We're talking about this exact point, really, like this idea that, is this a film that everyone's just poured their kind of intellectual discourse into? Is it really that deep? At times, you're saying it's very heavy-handed, but at times it's a little bit too hoity-toity, right? How do the fanboys sit with this? Do you feel like, obviously you've watched it a bunch of times, no doubt you've gone and studied it a bit, read some articles on it, maybe watched a few YouTube videos, and I'm sure it's matured like a fine wine. But do you feel like this story could have done better or got those ideas across in a more intelligent way? Or, do you, as Hassan, feel like this was kind of like slightly pretentious and at times maybe heavy-handed, like almost like a janky final project from some art school kid?
Hassan, this might come as a bit of a surprise or shock to you, when because obviously this has been discussed so much and it's so big in the otaku sphere. So obviously when Arno's been interviewed, and they have all these like massive open-ended questions to explain like the genius behind it, he just says, I felt like putting it in because it looked good. You've literally hit the nail on the head. It's so shallow. He didn't care at all. There's no deep themes there. He liked the look of crosses, so he put them in. There was no religious symbol, obvious religious symbolism that linked to any meaningful part of the story. He just really liked the look of Catholicism imagery, maybe some Norse god stuff with like Yggdrasil, the world tree. Like it's all bullshit. He just put it in. That's it.
GG.
GG, man.
I was going to say, like, if you asked me 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I probably would have been like, "No, it's well deep. You just don't get it, mate." But I think as time's gone by, I can look at it a lot more critically and think, you know what? Like, even though Wikipedia does say that it has all of these, allusions to different philosophies and different religions, the fact that I've seen it 2 times, the film multiple times, and I haven't picked up on it, means it's too much. It's too arty, hoity-toity. It was a good word, Hassan. But I don't think it's that weak for adding it. I think it does enough for me that I can think a little bit more deeply about it than most animes. And I like particularly, I got an interest in psychology, so what they do around mental health and the main characters struggle with that, I find fascinating. I think that's enough to carry it, even if, say, some of the religious iconography and themes probably went over my head and always will. I think it's still enough for me to get out of it that it feels deep enough.
Have you been convinced in any way? You still think
Not
it's a bit
even
hoity-toity?
now that I've been told that it doesn't mean anything. Now I'm thinking, so why did you obscure like the actual meaning of this thing by throwing in a bunch of like random images, but like really overkilling it to the point where it's like there's got to be a point here. Honestly, there's one point at the end of that film where there's like 3,000 crosses on the screen for like 20 minutes, just fucking crosses. I'm just like, I don't know why you throwing that in. Why are you obscuring what your actual message is? I don't know. I don't think it's like a triumph in storytelling, I'll tell you that. And now that I've had that, I think that even more. And I don't even think it's like that good an aesthetic that you want to like that he's borrowed from to this extent that it's like if it had some bearing on the story, then I get it now that it's just like I thought it looked cool. I'm feeling even less forgiving.
I think he does use it. I think he's using the religious iconography to show, like, you know, the creation and ending of the world. You know, that's a biblical theme right there. But I think that's probably about as deep as it goes with a lot of it. Yeah, and I also think that, you know, maybe recommending you to watch.
It's like it made everything so jumbled up. It made it hard to like unpick everything. So Healy, so you seem to have like quite a clear understanding of everything. How many times did it take you to watch it before you had this like clear narrative structure and all of this stuff and all of these characters? How many times did you watch it?
See, I've watched
before you could build that.
Before it clicks. Yeah, that's the thing. But it's not as simple as that. You're thinking white and black. This is a grey continuum. Every time I watch it, I take something new away from the film. Every time I look into the Wikipedia like archive, I pick something else that I completely missed the first time.
So I think this guy's actually like thrown everything down on the page, and I think that like actually affects the storytelling because it's like not consistent. So I think he's actually just like spewed a bunch of ideas down and just throw a bit of that. I'm thinking this right now. Throw a bit of that in, throw a bit of that in. I don't think it's like tied together neatly and like delivering me like, here's your fucking message on a plate. Because at the end of the day, this is meant to be for fucking kids as well. So...
But that's the genius. That's the genius of it. Anno's a marketing guru because what you take away from the film is completely unique to your experience and what you relate to. So if you put in all of these weird abstract elements, they're obviously going to be like only personable and relatable and to what your individual experiences are, how you relate to the characters, and that's why it's endlessly discussed about and can be discussed into forever and eternity. You know,
I kind of see what you're saying. I feel like listening to everyone's point of view is you can't really have a discussion on the value of this anime without some sort of wider kind of meta discussion on how you feel about abstract art in general. Do you know what I mean? I feel like this is a piece of abstract art that people pour meaning into, and it does guide you a little bit in its storytelling, its characters. But from what I'm hearing from you guys is that, you know, even the writer itself was like, nah, I just thought, Jesus, the whole Catholic thing looks cool, right? I think that says a lot. That's not to say it's bad, you know, like a lot of art forms that just don't make sense that people have kind of try to like
attach meaning to,
right? You know, have a tremendous value. Like we can't just poo-poo it, right? Just on the basis that people have just poured shit into it that doesn't really exist. You know, and I also feel like there is merit in the fact that this is something that people feel like they want to pour something into, right? You know, we're not making, you know, deep gender analysis about Digimon, are we? Like, it's a reason why we're picking apart this anime. You know, it's there's something about it that's a little bit more deep.
I think so. Like the themes I was talking about earlier around the psychological issues. I think the character work. I think the world itself is actually a really interesting one, and it's a good science fiction world that they've built. Tokyo 3 as a city can sort of go all the way underground. That just looks really cool. You know, we haven't talked about it, but the animation and the score I think are brilliant across the whole thing. I think the cinematography and direction is great.
Animation's okay.
Ah, man, I think it's got some moments of brilliance. I think the Asuka fight in the film, End of Evangelion,
Unparalleled.
so good.
That
So
is a
good.
good. That is a good fight. And again, that fight would have been better if she stayed dead. Like,
Yeah.
it would have. That would have been
Yeah,
a more meaningful ending to that bit. Do you know what? There was just a bit of it where it's just like when she's going on this rampage, where it's like, you're obviously gonna die at the end of this.
It felt like
it was just a bit bait. But it was good. Can't lie. It was good.
That was awesome. Was animated well. Another thing I think is animated spectacularly is the computer systems in this. Anytime there's a screen on the screen, it looks sick. There's all these mad flashing lights that sort of come across the screen in a wave. It's madly impractical, like user interface design, but it looks brilliant.
No, man, I thought the animation was all right, but like I wouldn't have been surprised if you told me this was like a film from like 1983, not 1995. There's not
Really?
Yeah, it's not like there's nothing where I'm just like, oh wow, I'm watching this now in 2020. I'm like, oh yeah, this is amazing. It's not. I don't think it's anything to write home about.
See, I actually find like the aesthetics and the architecture within Evangelion actually pretty mesmerizing. I don't know what it is. Like it's something that makes me like, I really want to be into this because it looks fucking cool. I just think I'm not a big mech guy, but like I just feel like I find the detail in the mech super interesting. Yeah, as Jack mentioned, kind of like the ergonomic kind of style of the computers, I find like really kind of, I don't know, like really kind of gripping. I really like that kind of style. So I think it does look amazing, and there's a reason why. Like, was it like one of the bullet trains in Japan had the Evangelion theme of one of them or something like that?
There's one up right now. It's the Ayanami line. It's designed entirely around Rei, and this is not the first time they've done this. Like the industry around Evangelion is insane. It's one of the top 50 highest grossing media franchises of all time by far. Even if I think something like 80% of that money comes from pachinko. Like it's a ridiculous figure.
Pachinko's big business. Pachinko's like
it's something like 9 billion out of 11 billion.
Yeah, it's 4% of Japan's GDP. It's huge, and Ava's like the biggest anime line in pachinko. So yeah, absolutely nuts money.
Okay, quick little divergence here on, because I feel like we always have to talk about the kind of the more cynical aspects of any anime that we're kind of digging into. Was there any kind of dumb comic relief character or like obvious push at a plush market, or
there's a penguin. There's just a penguin.
All right, talk to me about the penguin.
I don't know. Just a penguin pops out of the film. Probably done a lot of numbers in the plush toy market, I would guess.
Does the penguin have any meaning, guys?
You tell me, guys. I saw him a couple of times. It's like, why is this penguin here? What's up?
I suspected that the penguin was an angel, but I think maybe he was there just to sell plushies. He's pretty non-integral comedy relief.
So what I'm hearing is penguin's bad, giraffe's good. Have I got that right?
Correct.
You know that, man.
Cool. All right. This has been a really interesting discussion, actually. And I want to hear some closing thoughts. Hassan, I'm going to save you to the end because I want to hear one final plea. Like, I'm a non-believer, let's just say. I just burst into the church room. I don't believe in God. Terrible. This anime's crap. Holy One, tell me where I'm going wrong. Healy, why don't you kick us off? Like, why should people pour into this anime the way you've poured into it? What is it? What's so good about it?
When you was in the cinema watching Avengers and that big purple guy snapped his fingers and everyone turned to dust, that was baby shit. Evangelion turns everyone into a sea of blood. Everyone dissolves. Did you see the scene where everyone was slowly dying as third impact was happening? That was fucking sick. It has some of the best aesthetics going. If you love the analog style movie grain, shaking cells, hand-drawn animation, this one's for you. Every time a classical track kicks in, shit is going to go down. If you like mech anime, this one's for you. It's got that organometallic kind of like, it has the fleshy mechs, so they're armor plated on the inside, but they're nice and soft and squidgy on the inside. That means once the plates come off, the eyes get pecked out. It is brutal. If you like soul shattering screams from 14-year-old children as they either slowly die or embrace great trauma, you're in the right place. Ava, 11 out of 10, best animated media ever.
Wow, love that. Absolutely love that. You've actually gassed me up. I want to watch it. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how I can top that, but I agree. Anybody should watch Evangelion who even has a passing idea of what anime is. It's worth putting the time into. I think, Hassan, the way you watched it was suboptimal. The film, the reclip film that brings you up to speed just isn't enough. You need to watch the series to understand what these characters are going through, their backstory, that gives the events of End of Evangelion the weight that it needs. I think as a series as a whole, it's a fantastic exploration of mental health, of what would happen if you put a 14-year-old under such tremendous stress, and of some themes that I'm sure went way over my head. It looks incredible. The music's great. And as an ending, I think both endings are imperfect in their own ways. In the show didn't do what I think it set out to do, but had a nice, happier ending with every human dissolving. And then the End of Evangelion film was this visual feast that looked incredible, but maybe confused me at the end with what I thought was a bit of a backward step for its main character. But taken as a whole, I mean, yeah, 100% recommendation. Watch it if you haven't.
Okay. And finally, the skeptic of the room, the non-believer. You've just been pumped with some propaganda here, mate.
The non-believer.
How do you feel?
The kuffar, bro.
Yeah, the kuffar. How do you feel? How do you feel post discussion?
Post discussion, post watching it. Like I think I'm a pretty malleable guy, you know. I can be convinced. I'm not like deeply entrenched or set in my ways. And it's just sorry, boys, not today. I haven't done. I can watch Redline last week after Jack made such an impassioned plea. It's not like I'll be averse to the idea, but it's just I know exactly what it's going to be. A lot more like low octane drama, like repackaged the sci-fi, and I really do think it just insists upon itself. I think I'm like, don't regret watching it. It's not that deep. There's nothing that these guys have said or that I've watched that's gonna make me go back and watch 25 episodes of that. I know I don't need to. I know what it's gonna be. I prefer my narrative structure. I don't want to have to be going and looking for meaning in things. I want it. I don't want to have to rewind. No, not for me.
Hassan, you've seen Gurren Lagann, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I saw Gurren Lagann, and even the first time I watched that, I was like, "This is fucking shit." And I went back and watched it, and I was like, "Actually, Joe, what?" Even my friend told me when I watched it, he's like, "It's not shit. It's too deep for you, and you're a fucking idiot."
Yeah, there's hope. There's hope.
So I went back and I watched it, and I was like, "All right, I am an idiot. This was deep." But this isn't that. I know it's not that.
No, timestamp that. I'll talk to you again in 2022 and we'll see where you're at. Shinji's literally Simone. You know, they're the same character, same studio.
Yeah.
Like a couple of years later, they're exactly the same dude.
Honestly, it's even when I watched this when I was younger. This is actually I put this anime. It's responsible for my lifelong dislike of anything mech related. Is because of
Wow.
I just don't like it, man. It's not for me. It's just a bit. I swear, it's just dry, man.
No, I like that. I like the fact that even after conversation, in fact, you've fortified your thoughts.
Double down, man.
You've doubled down, man.
Go watch it. I want you to watch it before we speak next week.
Yeah, do you know what?
I bet you agree with me because it's okay. I'm not telling you it's a shit anime and don't watch it, but I've lost nothing for having not watched this for fucking the last 20 years of my life. And if I hadn't watched it until the day I died, it wouldn't be a fucking stain on my record.
Okay. Oh, I'll tell you what. Here's my thoughts going into the idea of watching it. After listening to the discussion, I feel not all good art is intentional, right? And I feel that this may be an instance of that. And the fact that it holds such a special place in the history of anime and in kind of Japanese national culture, right? That there must be something about this that really, really strikes a chord, not just with the country of Japan, but just, across anime views in general. The fact that it sparked so much thought and creativity surrounding it and the ideas surrounding it. There's got to be a reason why people care to do such a thing. And that, I think, is enticing to me, at least. I think it looks beautiful. I agree. I feel like the kind of the psychological themes that Jack raised sound really compelling to me. And I'd be looking forward to kind of digging into that. But I do also feel that this isn't the kind of anime you can just give to someone and be like, watch this. Everyone thinks it's class. You're going to love it. No, I feel like you're going to have to watch or listen to this podcast before You know what I mean? Like I feel like you're not going to get much out of it if you go in there dry, so to speak. You know, you wanna butter yourself up with a bit of discourse. But I'm actually quite excited about my run with this because
enjoy your homework, man. Enjoy it because it felt like homework to me, man. Felt like
well, worst comes to worst, I'll have a context while I'm playing my life away, the pachinko slots. But yeah, cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And we'll be back next week. It's going to be a very, very special topic. We're doing a tier list. So buckle up.
Nice.
Buckle up. We'll let you know all about it. And see you next time.
Safe.
Peace.
Well played, guys.
GG.